I want you to just take a second and imagine something with me.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine walking completely away from the relentless grind of modern society. I mean, literally leaving it all behind. The mortgage payments, the credit card bills, the endless notifications buzzing in your pocket.
Oh, and the baseline hum of stress that comes from just trying to climb the corporate ladder. Yeah.
Exactly. All those political arguments at the dinner table. Imagine dropping all of that today and stepping into a completely frictionless, worry-free existence. A place where every single one of your material needs is permanently met, without question.
I mean, it sounds like the premise of a fantasy novel, or maybe a really expensive, highly exclusive retreat that promises to fix your burnout in a weekend.
Right, but today, we are not talking about a weekend retreat. And we aren't talking about theoretical science fiction either.
No, we are diving into something very real.
Yeah, we're doing a deep dive into a translated essay published in June 2024. It's titled The Truth About Utopia, and it's written by an author named Sufeng.
And this text is, well, it's intense.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the literal blueprint of a real-world community called Lifechanyuan and what they call their second home utopian model.
Which is fascinating because the author claims this isn't just, an idea on a whiteboard.
Right, they say this is a functioning society that has been operating across multiple countries for 16 years. We're going to look at the incredibly radical rules they use to keep it running and explore how they claim to have engineered a society completely devoid of human conflict.
But before we really dig into the mechanics of those rules, it's vital to establish our framework for today's discussion. The text we are analyzing describes this community model in highly specific, ideologically charged terms.
Yeah, they specifically call it Shufeng-style communism and the kingdom of the greatest creator.
Which are very loaded phrases.
Extremely. So just to be completely transparent with you, the listener, we are not taking a side here. We are not endorsing these viewpoints, validating the religious or political ideology, or advocating for this lifestyle in any way.
Right. We are simply acting as your guide to explore the fascinating structural blueprints and psychological arguments laid out in the author's original text.
Exactly. We just want to objectively examine how this group claims to have built a working utopia.
Okay, let's unpack this, because usually when we hear the word utopia, we think of purely theoretical science fiction. But this text outlines a community that has supposedly been operating across multiple countries since April 2009.
Dissecting the mechanics of an idea without necessarily subscribing to it is honestly the best way to understand the psychology behind it. The author claims they have solved the puzzle of human misery.
Which is a bold claim.
Very bold. But looking at their proposed solution tells us a lot about how they actually view human nature.
So let's start with how they view reality itself. To understand how this community attempts to build a physical paradise on Earth, we first have to understand the author's baseline assumption about the universe.
And it starts in a place I honestly did not expect for a community planning document. No, not at all. The essay opens with this sweeping assertion about quantum mechanics, arguing that the reality we experience is a direct manifestation of our consciousness.
Right. It's heavily rooted in this interpretation of quantum theory.
So it's like, are they essentially saying reality is a giant mirror reflecting our collective mindset?
That analogy actually captures the text's premise perfectly. The author argues that quantum mechanics proves the world before our eyes is strictly the result of our observation.
Okay.
So if the collective consciousness is stressed, greedy, and combative, the physical reality rendered around us will be filled with poverty, war, and suffering.
But if the consciousness is peaceful?
Then the physical reality will instantly reflect a peaceful paradise. The text argues that social maladies aren't structural problems, they are purely symptoms of a corrupted collective mind.
Wait, let me push back on that for a second. Because it's a huge leap from abstract quantum physics to actually managing a commune of strangers.
Oh, it's a massive leap.
Like if someone steals my car, or if a society experiences an economic collapse, this text is arguing that it's just a projection of polluted thoughts. How do you possibly build a society on that premise? You can't just pass a law asking people to think happy thoughts while they are still stressed about paying rent.
And the author actually agrees with that skepticism. They write that having created Lifechanyuan for over 20 years, they have deeply experienced the truth of this quantum theory.
Okay, so what's their practical takeaway then?
Their conclusion is that you cannot just slap a Band-Aid on social problems by tweaking the economy or changing political leaders. If reality perfectly matches our consciousness, then curing human suffering requires physically dismantling the environment that causes the corrupted thoughts in the first place.
So you have to create an entirely new environment.
Exactly. You have to create an environment that strictly engineers and maintains a specific, purified collective mindset.
Because if the consciousness gets polluted, the reality gets polluted. So the founders of Lifechanyuan decided they had to completely reconstruct human institutions. They didn't just tweak society. They took a sledgehammer to basically every pillar of normal human existence to build this second home.
The logistical realities outlined in this text are honestly staggering when you start listing them.
Oh, they were wild.
Mm-hmm.
First, they claimed there are no rulers and no managers. There are only ideas, procedures, and divisions of labor.
Right, a totally flat hierarchy.
But I have to ask, how does a procedure take out the trash or resolve a dispute? Without someone in charge, it sounds like a recipe for a massive free rider problem where nobody does the hard work.
In a standard society, you would absolutely have a free rider problem. But the text claims that in the second home, there is no assessment and no supervision.
None at all.
None. Everything is done according to one's nature and ability. The community relies on an immense level of ideological adherence to those procedures. Every single person is a worker. There is no such thing as someone who doesn't participate in labor.
Because the environment has supposedly removed the stress and exploitation normally associated with work.
Exactly. And they also remove the primary motivation for hoarding resources in the first place.
Right. Personal property.
Yeah.
There is absolutely zero personal property in this model. You don't own your clothes, your tools, your phone, nothing.
It's entirely a system of take as needed.
But there is no distribution center and no rationing. Like, the text notes that bedrooms are not owned by any individual, though they are considered sacred and inviolable while you are using them.
Which is an interesting distinction.
Yeah, but if you own nothing, the logic is that there is nothing for anyone to steal from you.
Jealousy is essentially starved of its oxygen. If there is no accumulation of wealth, there is no social hierarchy based on who has more.
So strangers supposedly live together without theft, quarreling, or fighting, because the material triggers for those conflicts have been systematically erased.
That's the claim. And honestly, I can almost wrap my head around giving up a car or a house to escape the rat race.
Sure, minimalism on steroids.
But material wealth is only half the equation. The other half is biological wealth.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. The text outlines that they have completely abolished marriage, family, and relatives.
Which goes entirely against basic biological imperatives.
Completely. I mean, I have to ask, without family units or managers, how does a community in Thailand, Canada, or South Korea avoid descending into total chaos? How does the author justify severing the most fundamental human bonds?
The justification hinges on how the text views traditional loyalty. In a conventional society, your primary loyalty is to your spouse, your children, and your blood relatives.
Right, your immediate family.
And you naturally hoard resources and compete against other families to ensure the survival and prosperity of your specific genetic line. The text views the traditional family unit as an engine of selfishness.
Wow. So they see the nuclear family as the root of greed.
Basically, yes. By abolishing marriage and having the collective handle all elder care and child rearing, that deep emotional investment is redirected away from a small biological unit and outward to the entire community.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, because psychology and attachment theory tell a very different story. We know that a child needs a stable, consistent primary caregiver to develop properly.
Of course.
So if the collective raises the kids, aren't you just mass-producing abandonment issues? You can't just mandate that a biological mother stop feeling a unique attachment to her newborn.
The text actually challenges that modern psychological framework directly. From the perspective of the second home, biological parents in the outside world often view children as their personal property, projecting their own unfulfilled ambitions and anxieties onto them.
Oh, interesting. So they reframe parental love as ownership.
Exactly. The collective, however, views children as the shared future of the entire community. The argument is that the child actually receives more stability because they are supported by an entire village of caretakers.
Caretakers who are supposedly purged of selfish motives.
Right. The community becomes the only family, which supposedly removes the biological and economic triggers that lead a parent to favor their child at the expense of a neighbor's child.
So you don't fight for your kid to get the best resources, because every kid is just the collective's kid.
That's the theory.
Even if we accept that premise, human beings are still social creatures. Like, even without biological families or personal property, we naturally form bonds, We make
I
friends.
absolutely do.
You just vibe with certain people more than others. You get inside jokes, you share hobbies. If you live with the same people for years, you are going to form deep friendships.
And the architects of the second home anticipated that exact element of human nature. They recognize that platonic bonds will form, and this is key, they view those bonds as a significant threat to the utopian structure.
Wait, friendship is a threat.
Yes. And to combat this, they instituted a fascinating logistical mechanism. Rule number 7.
Yes. Rule number 7. This one blew my mind. It states that within 3 years, personnel must rotate to new locations to prevent the formation of what the text calls special emotional interest and factional relationships.
It's such a drastic measure.
I look at this like a mandatory corporate rotation program,
Yeah.
where multinational companies move executives around every few years so they don't get too cozy with their regional teams and forget the company's bottom line. But imagine that applied to your entire life, your living room, your friend group, everything.
Is it the ultimate anti-clique mechanism?
It really feels like you'd be living in a state of permanent transience.
That's a great way to put it. It is a ruthless application of systems designed to human sociology. In the outside world, we view deep friendships and tight-knit groups as a source of strength and mental health.
Yeah, we encourage people to find their tribe.
Exactly. But this text views those exact attachments as the seeds of factions, favoritism, and eventual resentment.
Having a best friend is literally a threat to the community's harmony.
According to them, yes, because a best friend means you have a preference. If you have a preference, you might naturally favor them in a disagreement. You might start spending all your time with a specific group, developing a subculture with its own norms.
And a clique is just a microfaction.
Exactly. Before long, you have an us versus them dynamic forming within the supposedly unified whole. Factions destroy utopias from the inside out.
Wow.
By forcing a physical reset every 3 years, moving someone from the Canada branch to the Thailand branch, for instance, the community prioritizes the harmony of the whole over the comfort of individual bonds.
So you literally aren't allowed to put down deep, localized roots with specific human beings. You are rooting your identity entirely into the ideology itself. I mean, the psychological toll of constantly saying goodbye every 3 years sounds exhausting.
Well, the text would likely frame that exhaustion as a symptom of your attachment to the old world. They frame this constant rotation not as a loss, but as a liberation from the burden of maintaining complicated interpersonal webs.
Liberated by being perpetually uprooted.
It ensures that your loyalty remains to the system. You are forced to practice systemic detachment on a rotating schedule. If no one has time to form a rival power base, the system remains unchallenged, and the reality rendered by the collective consciousness remains peaceful.
I mean, living completely detached without family, possessions, or a permanent zip code doesn't exactly sound like a casual lifestyle change. Hearing about this frictionless, worry-free society might make it sound appealing to just pack a bag and show up, but the text is very clear that the barrier to entry is incredibly steep.
Oh, it's monumental. You don't just get to walk in and claim a sacred, unowned bedroom.
No, you do not. The essay outlines 9 strict conditions required to live in this primary heaven, and these conditions require a complete surrender of your previous identity.
Right, like the first requirement is a mandatory minimum 6-month spiritual purification process.
6 months just to get your mind right.
You cannot simply arrive with your current mindset. You must be ideologically aligned before you even participate.
And part of that alignment involves adherence to something called the 800 values for new era human beings.
Yes, the 800 values.
Wait, 800 values? If this is supposed to be a simple natural existence where you just follow your nature without managers or supervision, why do they need an 800-point checklist for human behavior? That sounds like the exact opposite of a frictionless natural life.
It really highlights the central paradox of engineering a utopia. To achieve extreme simplicity and a lack of day-to-day supervision on the back end, you require extreme regulation and reprogramming on the front end.
Ah, I see.
The 800 values serve as the manual for overriding that corrupted consciousness we discussed at the beginning. If the goal is a society where no one needs a manager, every individual must have internalized the rules so deeply that deviation becomes unthinkable.
Beyond memorizing 800 values, the practical requirements are just as steep. You have to settle all worldly debts and completely sever earthly ties.
You can't owe anything to the old world.
Right. And you have to accumulate merit and actively participate in creating wealth, whether that is material, spiritual, or mental wealth. And perhaps the heaviest requirement of all.
Yeah.
You need to arrive having already achieved a state of being completely unselfish, selfless, and unattached.
That phrase, unselfish, selfless, and unattached, connects directly back to our discussion about the 3-year rotation rule and the abolition of the family.
You must arrive pre-detached.
Exactly. The system does not teach you how to let go of your ego. It demands that you have already discarded it before you are allowed to participate.
Which raises a massive question for you, the listener, as you evaluate these claims.
Mm.
You have to give up literally everything, own nothing, clear your bank accounts, and undergo months of ideological alignment just to get in the door.
It's the ultimate filtration mechanism.
Right. It begs the question, is it a utopia because the system is perfect, or because they only let in people who have already purged all their individual desires? It's like saying you built a perfectly fireproof house, but your only rule for entry is that you are never allowed to bring a match, a lighter, a piece of paper, or anything remotely flammable within 100 miles of the front door.
Of course the house doesn't burn down.
Exactly. The threat was eliminated at the perimeter, not by the architecture.
That filtration mechanism is precisely what allows the architecture to remain so seemingly fragile, operating without managers or property rights. And the author's tone at the very end of the text is structurally brilliant in how it defends this exact critique.
Oh yeah, they don't hold back.
The author actively challenges the reader, asking directly, can you do it? They state plainly that if you can meet these 9 conditions, you will ascend to heaven in one step. If you cannot, you must simply continue your current suffering-filled life in the secular world.
They also build a massive rhetorical fortress against criticism. The text states that if you misunderstand or slander this utopia, or if you simply don't believe the claim that it has successfully run for 16 years, it is entirely because your spherical perception hasn't opened.
Right.
The author literally writes, if you can't live in a paradise on earth, it's because you are still a common person.
By framing disbelief or an inability to participate as a spiritual failure on the part of the reader, the system insulates itself from any outside scrutiny.
It's foolproof for them.
Totally. If an observer points out that severing children from their parents seems harsh, or that an 800-point value system sounds authoritarian, the ideological response is already baked in. You only perceive it that way because you are insufficiently spiritually evolved.
It's the ultimate emperor's new clothes defense mechanism.
Okay.
You can't critique the system because the very act of critiquing the system is used as proof that you are too spiritually flawed to understand its brilliance.
Exactly. It creates a closed loop where validation is the only accepted input, and all criticism is dismissed as common ignorance.
The burden of proof is placed entirely on the individual's spiritual purity, deflecting any examination of whether the social model itself is actually viable for human beings.
The result is an impenetrable ideology. But, even if we view that rhetorical fortress with heavy skepticism, analyzing the blueprint of the second home forces us to deeply examine our own baseline assumptions.
It definitely makes you think.
The author correctly identifies that money, property, and family dynamics are the primary sources of stress, jealousy, and conflict in the modern world. Their solution is just to amputate those elements entirely.
We have covered some incredibly deep ground today, mapping out a profoundly radical vision of human social engineering. We started with the foundational belief that our collective consciousness literally dictates our physical reality.
Like the quantum argument.
From there, we journeyed into the heavily structured environment of the second home, a society that attempts to cure human misfortune by taking a sledgehammer to traditional institutions. They abolished personal property, dismantled biological families, and instituted a system of permanent transients, rotating members every 3 years to intentionally prevent deep interpersonal bonds from forming.
And finally, we saw how the extremely steep price of admission and the author's rhetorical framing creates a psychological fortress, keeping the ideology safe from anyone deemed a common person. Whether you view a community like Lifechanyuan as an inspiring alternative way to live in harmony, or as a deeply restrictive social experiment that strips away the very essence of human individuality, it undeniably holds up a mirror to the way we live now.
It really does.
It forces you to ask difficult questions about your own life. Do the things you own, the properties you meticulously accumulate, and the intensely protective family units you build actually bring you lasting joy and peace? Or do they generate a constant baseline hum of anxiety, competition, and fear of loss? The architects of the second home argue the latter, and they constructed an entire alternative reality to escape that hum.
That brings us right back to where we started our deep dive today. I asked you to imagine walking away from society, leaving behind the bills, the stress, and the conflict. A worry-free existence sounds beautiful until you read the exact itemized receipt for that piece.
It's a very high price.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own as you step back into your day, return to your property, and interact with your family. If a perfectly harmonious, conflict-free society genuinely requires completely eliminating personal possessions, outlawing permanent friendships, and pulling up your individual roots every 3 years, does the eradication of human suffering inherently require the eradication of traditional human attachment?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Think about that for a second. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.